Hi there, everyone. My name is Patrick Kelly. I'm the Director of Education at Stokes Nature Center, and thank you for joining us for another Canyon Conversation. Today, we're joined by Dr. Frank Howe, who is the University Research Liaison for the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources and works right here in Logan at Utah State University. Hi, Frank. How are you?
Good. How are you, Patrick?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for talking to us today about the Logan River restoration and all things Logan River restoration related.
Okay, sure. I'm very happy to do it.
Yeah, so I guess my first question is, not everyone might be familiar with the Logan River restoration. So my first question is, why is the Logan River being restored? Isn't it doing just fine? It's flowing, there's water, there's things happening, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the reason that we've been involved with restoring the Logan River is that, really for the past 150 years or so, mostly what we've tried to do to the river is tame it. And we've always been interested in harvesting the water for irrigation and that sort of thing, and then also preventing floods. And obviously we want to continue to do that, but a lot of the efforts that we made for those things in the past have led to a loss of other amenities that we get from the river. And it's led to the loss of how the river functions as well. So, just some of the things that we've done in the past haven't really been all that good for the river. And so that's why we're needing to do river restoration in 2020.
Yeah, so what are some of those things that we did in the past where we thought back then that it was the right thing to do, but now we obviously understand that it wasn't?
Yeah, a lot of what we tried to do was, the Logan River obviously runs through the town of Logan, and so we wanted to protect the infrastructure that's there, the streets and the houses and that sort of thing. And the thought back in, say, the 1950s and before was the best way to do that is to move the river through the city as fast as possible. And so the river sort of naturally wants to meander and move back and forth as it runs through the town and through the valley. And what we've really tried to do is straighten that river, or channelize the river, move it through town as fast as possible. And that just doesn't work particularly well. It sort of takes what is a river that's flowing kind of slow and moving back and forth and makes it more like a fire hose. You force the river to be much smaller, and that you still have the same amount of water coming down the river, but now it's coming down in one concentrated area, coming down really fast. And so that's been one of the big problems. One of the other problems is that we've removed all of the wetlands that are associated with the river. We've drained those wetlands. And, we thought in the past that really these are just mosquito-infested wastelands, so we want to get rid of all of them. And really what we found is that those wetlands were providing much of the sponge for the river to not flood. So the wetlands are really kind of soaking up that water and preventing the river from flooding. So now we've channelized the river, we removed all the wetlands, and we have a whole lot of flooding problems really that are related to how we've dealt with the river in the past. And so we're trying to rectify some of those problems now.
So does some of these solutions look like, so the restoration, is it restoring it back to more or less its original state, or are we restoring it towards having characteristics of having its original state?
Yeah, so we really can't restore it to its original state. I mean, that would take, having everybody that lives next to the river move out and not putting any roads over the river and that sort of thing. So what we're really trying to do with the Logan River restoration is balance some of the ecological values with some of the social values that are there for the river. So we can't fully restore all the natural functions, but we can do some things to the river in different places to make it act more like it did 150 or 200 years ago, and provide those values to nature that have been lost, but then also keep our respect for the people that are living next to the river, keep the respect for the infrastructure that's there, work around some of those issues, to balance both having the social values there and the ecological values.
Excellent. So my next question is, what is the importance of river management and how has it evolved over time? You kind of touched on, we used to channelize it and now we're giving it more of its meander. And, it's important to prevent flooding, but what are some of those other values for river management that you were discussing earlier? You said ecological, recreation, or two other sort of groups of values.
Yeah, so I would say sort of the big picture values of a river is rivers move water, obviously, so that's one of the big functions of a river. But along with that, they also move sediments, and usually attached to those sediments are nutrients. And if you put sediments and nutrients together, that's called soil. So, the floodplains of our rivers in the West are some of the most fertile lands that we have throughout the West and in the state of Utah. And it's because of the river moving water, flooding these areas occasionally, and bringing water, nutrients, and soil or sediments all into one place. So that's really kind of the basics of it. In terms of what we're trying to do for all of the different social and ecological values, our team, the Logan River Task Force, got together and came up with a number of indicators of river health. And I want to talk a little bit about the task force. So the task force is a number of people from the university, as well as Logan City. Logan City's actually been a major player in this, both the Public Works Department and the Parks and Recreation Department. And then we also have the Cache County involved, as well as a number of state and federal agencies like the Division of Wildlife Resources, the agency that I work for, and then nonprofits like Bridgerland Audubon, Cache Anglers, a fishing group, Trout Unlimited, another fishing group, as well as some corporations like Pacificor that own a lot of property on the river. And then we've worked with a group called BioWest, which is a local consulting firm, an environmental consulting firm. So all of those folks have worked together on determining what we wanted the river to look like. And it really wasn't just our group, but our group went out and we met with the public, people that live next to the river, people that just like to use the parks and those sorts of amenities around the river, and say, hey, what do you want this river to look like? We're gonna spend some money and we're gonna fix this river. What do you want to see it look like in the future? And so through that process, we came up with 22 different indicators of health of the river. I won't go through all of those, but I'll just highlight maybe a few of them. One of them is spring peak flows. So that's kind of when most of the floods occur. So have we done something in the past to really impact how spring peak flows would happen? And are we sort of happy with where spring peak flows are now? Is there something we can do to change where spring peak flows are? Another one is called summer base flows. So that's the lowest point that the river gets at in the year. That's the time when people are pulling water out of the river for irrigation. It's also the middle of the summer, so there's less water coming down. The water, the snow is all melted in the mountains, and the water coming down the river is much less now. And that's really sort of the pinch point, the bottleneck that we run into for most of what we're looking at is the low spring flows. They're much, much lower now than they should be. And so we're looking for ways to get more water in the river during the middle of the summer. How much water the river moves during floods, called flood conveyance. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in that, as well as things like in-stream habitat for trout and other fish. We have water quality issues that we're interested in looking at. So those are a number of the ecological values. And the one that I'm really most attached to is bird habitat. So I'm a bird guy. I really like to have a lot of habitat out there, riparian habitat that's available for the birds. And then on the social side of things, we want to be able to have people enjoy the river. So we want to have trails that are near the river, not right next to the river necessarily, because that's where we want to reestablish a lot of the native vegetation. but areas that are close to the river that people can come down and enjoy. And these, could be areas that maybe you take your bike on, maybe just do a little hike, as well as some natural areas that have maybe some interpretation of, why we planted these trees here and we planted these shrubs over here. As well as we're establishing a blue trail. So this is a paddle trail so people can enjoy the river from the river, to be able to take a kayak or a paddle board or a canoe down to the river and be able to paddle around on the river. So those are some of the social things that we're looking at there, as well as things like, fishing success and other reasons that people would generally enjoy a river.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just hearing sort of that approach again versus the channelization that we saw in the 1950s, was there an inflection point or an event somewhere in river management history that kind of had this shift from just move it out, get it to, a larger body and let that larger body of water handle this water flow, to now it's let us utilize the natural characteristics of the river for its greatest holistic benefit?
Yeah, it's been sort of a slow evolution, I think, of river management. In Logan, we did have sort of a threshold point, and it really wasn't too long ago. It was back in about 2013, 2014, when we had a pretty big flood in 2011 that actually came through and destroyed a number of houses, destroyed some infrastructure in the city. And so the city responded to that, and a lot of the responses that the city had weren't what we would consider state-of-the-art river management. And so we decided at that point, well, let's work with the city. I mean, they wanted to do the right thing. I think they just took some missteps. And so we have worldwide experts that are working at Utah State University in river restoration. Let's get them involved. Let's start working with them and work with them directly with the city to not say, this is what you did wrong, that's what you did wrong, but to help them move forward and do really state-of-the-art river restoration. And that's kind of what got us all started here on the Logan River, and the city's responded just fantastically. I mean, they kind of went, yeah, we kind of screwed that up. How can we make that better? And so, between the mayors and the city council, we've really been able to make a lot of progress and do some very good things for the river.
That's fantastic that we've been able to juxtapose sort of our humility and not fully understanding of the river with this expert base that lives right here in Cache Valley and utilizes it. Probably more than we all think, which leads me into my last question for you today, Frank, which is, what can we as the general public do to protect and support the Logan River and its restoration, whether it's through how we view the river, utilize it, or even just communicate about it?
Yeah, I think there's certainly a number of things that folks can do. People that live near the river, we've actually developed a planting guide so that talks about all the different types of native vegetation that you could put in your backyard that would make it better for the wildlife that use it, and also help to stabilize the bank in some places, but not fully armor the bank. So we don't want to channelize it. We want to get away from that channelization. And then we've done some demonstration projects at Stewart Nature Park. We've done a demonstration project where there was a lot of erosion going on there. It was eating into the bank of the river. And instead of just putting a big concrete wall there, the strategy is to lower the side of the river, lower the bank of the river, and allow the river actually to flow into that area every once in a while when it floods. So every 5 or 10 years or so, we try to set the line at about a 5-year floodplain, and then plant that lowered area with a bunch of native vegetation, trees and shrubs and grasses, that when the river floods into that area, that vegetation slows the flow of the river down. So it dissipates a lot of the energy that the river is trying to carry down during this flood. And it also allows the river then to drop out those soils, those sediments and the nutrients and that sort of thing. And so we're trying to show folks that live along the river that this terracing of the river bank is a better way to handle flooding than just to put up a big concrete wall. So that there's a lot of things that people that live next to the river can do to help with those sorts of things. But then also people that are just interested in maybe coming down and helping us plant some trees or plant some shrubs. We have a lot of opportunity for those types of events. And then also people that are interested in Logan River restoration, if they like what they see, just contact your local government, contact the city, contact the county. Let them know that you're interested in having the local governments continue to support this and do this sort of work, and you want to see more of Logan River restoration.
That sounds great. Well, Frank, thank you so much for taking the time today to talk about this project that really affects all of us throughout Cache Valley. And best of luck. I'll definitely be looking at the Logan River and trying to spot any leftover channelization for planting some native plants instead.
Okay, great. Well, Patrick, I really appreciate it. It was my pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Frank.
All right, thank you.